Hello, friends, and welcome back. My name is Eric, and I am the co founder and owner of our brand called Escape. And today I want to share with you a little bit about the story or how I went from working on board cruise ships and representing some of the world's most unique gemstones and brands to having my very own collection on board cruise ships and how that has changed my life. This is all about understanding the heritage, gaps in a multi billion dollar industry that I saw, and building something that is meaningful and, in my opinion, beautiful. So, part one is what I like to call the cruise retail years. And these started in my early 20s. I started in the entertainment department on board Royal Caribbean. The Mariner of the Seas was my first ship ever. And in fact, that was the first time I ever saw a cruise ship. And it was the first time I'd ever been on a cruise ship. So it was quite an overwhelming experience, and one that I am so glad that young Eric was brave enough to step onto that gangway because it changed our life forever. And in the first, I'm going to say, few weeks, I was on board in entertainment, and in the first few weeks, I realized there was an opportunity to work in the shops and to work as a promoter for different shops and different brands. And I really enjoyed watching these super glamorous people do these talks in front of hundreds of people and tell them where to go shopping and what to shop for and when to shop and where to shop and how to shop. And it was just so exciting. And I was so fortunate because within 6 months, I had found an opportunity through a friend of mine to move into that role. And that role was that of a port and shopping guide. And that role allowed me to really start understanding the unique psyche of the cruise ship guest. Everything from understanding what their vacation mindset would usually encourage them to shop for, what type of purchases are considered impulse purchases, understanding what type of brands or products require an experience driven retail opportunity. And it was amazing. I'm not going to lie, it was absolutely amazing, and I loved it. I got really good in that role. I got really good at understanding people, helping um, quickly and promptly offer recommendations to them based on what they were looking for. And I got to understand people were sharing their anniversaries, they were sharing some celebratory reasons why they were on the cruise, or maybe they just wanted a little memento to capture their adventure. Whatever the case was, they were coming to me and entrusting me to tell them where to go, how to go, um, what to look for to help them capture that moment. And I'm so grateful because that role allowed me to cruise the Caribbean, cruise the Mediterranean, and Alaska, and Hawaii. And it was such an incredible opportunity. From there, though, I really fell in love with some key brands, and I ended up working for one of the brands specifically, and my role at the beginning consisted of me being on board cruise ships representing that one brand. And it was a great opportunity. It was a phenomenal gemstone, so people were always eager to learn about it. I love the storytelling that was required for this gemstone because I felt like that is the story is what makes the gemstone so incredibly amazing. I mean, the gemstone itself is amazing, but the story I truly loved. And I think that for me, being a storyteller, I quite enjoyed working with that brand. And as I was spending time in that brand, I grew and I within the team, and then I became the vice president for the company based out of New York City. And that was amazing. I became VP at 29, and I was blown away by having that opportunity. Um, but that led me to another few years of working in the industry, and again realizing that every season I was working with same brands, same gemstones, a lot of the same stories. And those same stories were repeated across, different destinations with a little tweak here and there, whether it be something that we were selling in Athens, or we were selling carpets in Kushadasi, or we were selling uh, gold quartz in Alaska. The truth is, there was always a story behind it, and after doing it for over a decade and a half, I was looking for something a little bit different, a little something unique. I wanted to find I wanted to find my own contribution. Like I wanted to find something that I could bring to the industry that I love so much. And I wanted to do something that was mine that people could look back and be like, wow, Erick did that. Erick introduced that gemstone to us. And just I think that I enjoyed the that role so much that I genuinely thought I was going to be doing that forever. But in 2019, I got married. And well, that kind of changed everything. And I ended up moving back to Canada. I was born in California, raised in Canada. My family's from Guatemala. So we've even lived in Guatemala for a few years when I was a teenager. So I've been traveling a lot, right? So for me to move back to Canada was just another phase that I was looking forward to. And while I was there, I started working at the Botanical Gardens of Canada. In fact, they are the largest botanical gardens in Canada. And I started in guest services, and then I got promoted, and I became the director of one of the oldest property that they have. And it was such an incredible opportunity. But I found in learning so much about the Canadian culture, the flora, the the impact that today's society has on the Canadian uh, ecosystem. I came across a gemstone that sounded familiar, and that gemstone was jade. And to me, jade was a stone that I was quite like to me it was quite common because I grew up watching my the women in my family wear jade, and this reintroduction of jade, Canadian jade, into my life led me to part two, which I call the Jade Awakening. And this was really an interesting part because, like I mentioned, growing up Guatemalan, my we used to go to Guatemala every single year for the holidays, and every year when we were in Guatemala, we would go to a place called Antigua, Guatemala, and from there we would go shopping. Of course, you go to lunch, you do this. And that. It was like a day trip type thing, and my mom always stopped at a jewelry stall or a jewelry store, and she would buy a piece of jade. So for me, that was just a tradition, right? Like I didn't really think much of it as a kid. I think most of us can think back of things that mean something now that didn't mean anything when we were kids because that's just the way we are. And it's really funny to me that it took over a decade and a half for me to realize that the entire time that I had been on ships, jade hadn't been represented. There was no real connection to it. There was no market for it. There was no marketing. I think that makes a big difference for that particular gemstone. And I started just digging into it a little bit more. The more I learned about jade, the more the absence of it in the industry struck me as curious. And as I started learning about jade, I started learning about the connection between jade and Mesoamerica. And I learned that there have been millennia of just like there have been thousands of years of history with jade in Mesoamerica that we don't know about. The truth is that there's been jade and it's been revered and valued by the societies and the peoples of Mesoamerica for millennia. And the only reason why, when we think of jade, we think of the East is because of marketing. That's the only reason. And so for me, the more I learned about it, the more passionate I became about this particular gemstone. And I think that that's where I had a little bit of an emotional shift. And I started falling in love with a gemstone that I truly do believe is meant to be in my life. Because I was born in California, and coincidentally, not far from where I was born, you can find jade. My parents are from Guatemala, and in fact, my family still owns property in Guatemala, and it's near where the jade quarries are. And I was raised in Canada, where there is also jade. So it's really interesting because the I have always had jade in my surroundings, but it was only until recently that I realized what a blessing having that gemstone in my environment has been. And that is really the basis for how I started creating and curating the foundation for our brand Escape. Now, part three is what I call Jade 101, or a quick segment on Jade education, because it was so interesting to me because I just thought jade was jade and jade was green. And I couldn't have been more wrong if I tried. In fact, their jade is a commercial term used for two different types of gemstones, jadeite and nephrite. Now, both of these gemstones are equally jade. Um, they share a lot of the similar properties, but they are different gemstones. The GIA, everyone, the industry sees both of these gemstones as jade, but it is a misconception to think that they only come in green. And the reason why green is the most popular color is because that was what was popularized in the East, in China, in Japan, and that was the color that was most sought out in that region. However, in Mesoamerica, what we have is a wide range of jade, from black to blue to green to yellow and red and little bits of lilac and lavender. And understanding where these gemstones come from and the colors that are available became almost like an obsession for me. And a lot of the curation I do with the designs or even the pairing of gemstones that I do are based on the fact that I want people to understand how incredibly deep the depth of options that this gemstone has is absolutely incredible. So, I love pearls. I absolutely love pearls. So I like combining jade with pearls. I enjoy combining jade with different types of quartz, different gemstones like tiger's eye. And again, this is a gemstone that has been revered by so many different cultures. And what's interesting is that while green jadeite jade happens to be one of the most prized types of gemstones, most of the artifacts that come out of China, or most of the ancient artifacts, are actually nephrite because that is what was available in China. And jadeite really wasn't introduced into their market until they started trading with Burma. In Guatemala, what we have is jadeite, and jadeite jade is by many considered to be the better or the more expensive version of jade because of its properties, because it gives us a wider color range, because it gives us more translucency in a lot of those shades. And in Guatemala in particular, there is a shade of jade called blue, Olmec blue. And that type of jade is the type of jade that was most valued by the Olmecs. Interestingly enough, the Olmecs, the Mayas, every culture valued a different color of jade, but they all valued jade. They used jade in their hunting gear. They used jade in decorative pieces. They used jade in ceremonial pieces. So jade was something that was always sought out by all of the peoples, and that makes a very, very big difference. The other thing that is kind of interesting to me is that jade is a gemstone that, like I mentioned, has been used for millennia. And when the Spanish came to Mesoamerica, to what we now call Central America, what they realized is that there was this gemstone that the local cultures were using for pagan rituals, as they would call them. And because of that, they strongly discouraged the use of jade, the hunting of jade, the mining of jade, the working with jade. And it's so sad to think back and realize that in just a couple of decades, they managed to erase millennia of culture and tradition that surrounded jade. Now, it wasn't until about 1970 or so that they were able to bring uh, jade back into the market, and that's because a very interesting lady called Mary Lou Rissinger, she and her husband, they were credited with rediscovering this particular gemstone. And when they rediscovered it, because again, remember, it had been basically forgotten about for a few centuries. When it was reintroduced in the 1970s, a lot of people gave them a hard time, and they didn't believe that this was real jade, because in their minds, jade had been mined out in this area, and you could only get jade uh, in Asia, in the East. And fortunately, they did not give up, and they continued doing their research, and they continued looking for more jade. And they started doing some really good work with marketing. And the industry finally understood that there was top quality, world class jadeite jade being mined in Guatemala. And I'm kind of excited because I think that the timing is perfect, because now that we're finally able to produce and introduce this gemstone to the market is when I'm ready to do it, and I've been having the most fun introducing this gemstone to our guests on cruise ships. Now, the fourth phase, I'd say, is what I call building escape, and the philosophy behind curating. A lot of people go on cruises, and crew members as well, and they will go and they'll collect souvenirs, or they'll buy chocolates or magnets or something like that. I've always been the kind of person that I go out and about and I collect business cards. And the reason for that is because I usually find a really cool artist or a really cool designer, or a really interesting brand, or a really awesome restaurant, because I love to eat. I always collected business cards, and I essentially collected contacts of people that had interesting stories, interesting products, and something that was a little bit unique. And when I started working on presenting my jade collection, I started thinking, why stop at jewelry when I have all these incredible contacts? What can I do to introduce them to? And that is when I came up with the concept of escape. Because to me, escape is a platform to escape the mass production. Escape is a platform where you can escape run of the mill. You can escape from the usual gemstones you see everywhere. You can escape from the big labels. Um, and you can get to know the stories that have inspired these collections, the stories that have uh, created these household names, if you will. And to me, that is what makes Escape so incredibly special. It's more about curating quality over volume. Now, I do have a lot of product because I have a lot of partnerships on our website, and they're always changing. Sometimes I'll only have a brand on the website for 3, 4 months, and then I take them off. Uh, our partnerships are sometimes very short lived, so it's a great practice of yours to visit our website frequently and see what's new and happening. It's also a great practice to sign up for our newsletters because I like to write. Behind the label is a series that I have where I tell you the story that I fell in love with and why I carry that brand on Escape. Um, but as I mentioned, traveling, I focused on more than just jewelry. I wanted to share all of the things that brought me joy, all of the people I met, all of the products I discovered while traveling. And that included some yummies. For example, we have caviar on our website. And what's the correlation between caviar and jewelry? Honestly, they both bring me joy. I absolutely love caviar. I'm just a simple boy who likes caviar. And I never quite enjoyed the stuffy feeling that I would get from some caviar companies. And then I came across the Caviar Co. and I love their story. It started by two sisters, and they have really revolutionized the way that caviar is presented to the larger audience. And they make it extremely accessible. And so I've partnered with them, and you can find their product on our website now. Another example of a treat that I fell in love with is chocolate. Um, there's a brand called Raka, and I have them on our website as well. And they specialize in unroasted cacao bean chocolate. So the chocolate has a unique flavor because the cacao beans have never been roasted, so therefore you get like a lighter profile. It's kind of interesting. And I love how creative they are with the blends. Like the banana Foster chocolate is one of the best selling. Um, if you're looking at getting a chocolate for like a chocolate lover, we have our 12 best sellers on there. It's like a package of the 12 most popular and most amazing chocolates, and you can get that through our website. And one of the things that I'm very proud of is that when you buy from our website, you know that you are giving as much possible to that local community. Like if you're buying our jade, you're buying it basically one stop over from the source, right? Like I worked really hard to try to get as close to the source as possible so that when you're shopping with Escape, when you're shopping with us, you're getting it at the best deals that you could possibly get, or the widest selection if that's the case. And so for me, I quite enjoy partnering with brands that have craftsmanship and authenticity, and they understand the importance of provenance. There are coffee brands that I carry on seasonally. Favor Coffee, and she is an Asian American woman that is in the coffee trade, and she roasts coffee in the states, and she works with women-owned coffee farms. And so, really, you're looking at like super, super, super niche or boutique type of roasts, and I love offering you those type of connections, and giving you the opportunity to discover some of these absolutely incredible brands on Escape. But just like when I was in jewelry, and what I loved about the gemstones were the stories, I 100% love the stories behind each and every single one of our brands. So I did mention it before, I'll mention it again. If you're not part of our email list, get on it because I try to feature um, one brand per week, and I love sharing the story uh, that the founder has and what has led them to this particular piece. The next session, I think it's five, is what I call, our product spotlight or our current collection. And on our website, you're going to find a beautiful selection of jewelry from a variety of different brands, different gemstones, pearls, opals, diamonds, tanzanite, jade, of course, jade. And in that collection, you're also going to find very unique styles of jewelry that maybe you haven't seen before. And while shopping on our website is one way to support these incredible brands, another way to shop with us is perhaps, and it's our main way to shop with us, is onboard luxury cruise ships. We get the opportunity to go on board ships and host events called trunk shows. And basically, what that means is that I show up with a trunk full of jewelry and I park myself inside the store somewhere and we show you the products. And you get products like this, a lot of unique, one of a kind pieces featuring Guatemalan jade most of the time, giving you this very unique aesthetic that you wouldn't find from a lot of the big chains. And to me, that is the most fun because we get to explore the gemstones together. I get to share with you a little bit of the history. I get to share with you a little bit of my passion. And then you go ahead and take a piece of jade with you that is relevant to our ports of call. And I always try to make sure that the collection I have, in some way, shape, or form, is directly related back to the ports of call that we're going on that cruise. So in terms of our current collections, right now we're not at the point where I'm putting pieces like this on our website. Who knows in the future? But right now, we can't produce enough to have on the ship and on our website. So if you are looking for something special, though, I usually do have some pieces that I've either just received from the workshop or that I've got back from a ship and I'm preparing to send out again. So if you are looking for some one of a kind pieces, reach out to me. If I'm happy to show you what I have available and to work something out for you. Um, in Let's see, the next section would be what's next, right? So part six is what's next for Escape. I think that for me, I'm going to continue honoring the brands that have the stories across all of our categories. I want to develop our categories. I think I have a really strong offering in our jewelry category. I would like to offer a bit more options in our treats category. I've started curating an art collective where I have partnered with some really awesome artists that have that have their artwork on our website. I've also started working with some amazing brands that do textiles like hats or throws or blankets that are made in Ecuador and Peru, or photo straps. We have Argentine leather with Guatemalan textiles. So I really want to make that a more robust offering to be on par with my jewelry offering at the moment. And I want to continue educating. I find that what I love about the pieces of anything that I've collected in my, you know, almost 20 years at sea is the fact that I enjoy remembering the story. And that's what makes it so incredibly special. So, my goal for 2026 is to share more of the stories behind the brands and do what I can to help you support the vendors in a fun editorial style, if you will. That's kind of my goal for this year. All that to say, if we've met on board a cruise ship and now you're watching me on YouTube and you've gone to our website, I can't thank you enough. Don't forget to register your purchases on our website for your warranty. If this is the first time that you've watched us and you're still here, well, you know what? Thank you so much. Welcome to Escape. And I hope that you find something that is just a little bit unique that you might enjoy and you might want to take home with you. And whether you're looking for jewelry or home decor or a a spa session, the truth is, I've worked really hard to try to find unique brands to offer you an elevated experience, an escape, if you will, from your everyday. So, that being said, I'll have a few links in my bio to lead you towards my blog and to lead you towards the website. And I really do truly hope that we get to meet one day and that we can help curate your escape. into something absolutely incredible. Thanks again, friends. See you soon.